Hello team, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name's Cameron. I'm currently an Accountancy and Finance student at Heriot-Watt University based in the UK. In this channel, we look at my life while I simultaneously give you the best life, academic, employability and mindset advice I can give. Well, furthermore, we explore business topics. Today we are exploring the business topic of globalization. This video is at A-level and advanced higher level. So, let's get into it. We go through this here very fast, so please keep up on pause and ask questions when you find anything hard. Please comment any questions you have below and I will try my hardest to answer them, as well as if there's enough need for a response video, I will make a video helping you with it if enough people need them. I'm going to go fast here, so please keep up because I want to keep this accurate and short and stop me over explaining it. Basically, because I will over explain it if I don't go fast. Today's learning outcomes: be able to define globalization, know the common terms related to globalization, understand the background of globalization, understand how globalization is measured, know the reasons for globalization, understand the benefits of globalization on multinational organizations, understand the negative effects of globalization on multinational organizations. Now, what is globalization? Globalization is a process by which the economies of the world become more integrated through the freer flow across national boundaries of goods, investments, finance, and to a less extent labour. The term is sometimes applied more broadly to include ideas like culture and even the spread of epidemic diseases. Now, first of all, I'm going to put pandemic in there because, pandemic diseases spread fast. Now, in terms of advanced higher business, culture is in the definition they will be examining you on, so it's quite a broad definition of globalization they will use if you're in advanced higher business. Now, what is globalization? This is a definition, but doesn't really tell you fully what it is. Basically, globalization, let's take for example two worlds. We have a world, both of them have 3 countries in it. This world has no globalization. Number 1 has no globalization. Number 2 has globalization. What's the difference? Globalization, world 2, they're all interconnected. There's a connection between them. They trade with each other and that they just really communicate with each other, really. That's the difference. One of them trades with each other, the other one doesn't. And that the trade is more free, as well as the communication and the working in is more free as well. So it's basically the more global a country can be. So this is country 2A and 2B and 2C. Country A is more global to all these countries. Country A on example 1 may not even be known to country B. That is like what globalization does. Now, common terms related to globalization: export. What is exports? I think this is quite basic, and I'm trying to keep this to a high level of knowledge. I assume you have, due to how advanced to do an advanced higher, you need an need higher to get into it. To do A-level, you need a GCSE normally to do it. Now, what's an export? An export, a good or service produced in one country and sold to another country. Pretty simple. Country A exports something to country B. Now, the opposite of exporting is importing. So basically, country A exports to country B. What's country B doing? Importing goods from country A. So goods and services consumed in a country that have been purchased from another country. So country B is consuming country A's goods, which they've purchased, basically. Trade deficit. A country has a trade deficit if its imports exceeds its exports. So let's take an example. Country A and country B inter-trade, so they export and import from each other. Country B is importing 100 and exporting 95, so they have a trade deficit of 5. Let's say -5 because it's a deficit. It makes, in calculations, they'll come up as a negative, so it's presumable they have a deficit. So that is because their exports is less than their imports. Now, the opposite of that is a trade surplus. A trade surplus is when exports exceeds its imports. So, for example, country A, keeping the same example, will have A plus 5 trade surplus because they are exporting 100 and only importing 95. Now, which one would you rather have? It's quite a hard question. I'm not going to define what you want here. What would you rather have? Because it's really situational more than anything. The history of globalization. 2 periods of globalization. There's one prior to the First World War, and then there's one after World War II. I'm going to say in between. I'm going to put the after World War II, after World War One, 1918 to the end of World War II. It's a period of deglobalization. Let me write that down. Deglobalization. Periods before that, globalization was happening. And this is Globalization 1 and this is Globalization 2. Now, what has happened in both of these is that the world is becoming more interconnected in both of these time periods, and then during a war and a depression, the world has become disconnected. And this is because, first of all, war, they're not going to be trading. For example, in Germany, after the First World War, they did not have Coca-Cola imports from America. So they made Fanta as a substitute to it, which was an absolute load of rubbish they found on the street, like banana skins and stuff, which is, by the way, an amazing drink. Fanta now, not Fanta then. So that's what happened. And after World War II, international relations picked up, and we never really looked back. Globalization has spurred on since then. Now, the barriers to trade, impediments to trade, are counter-cyclical with globalization. Now, let me write that down. This is an important word to know. Counter-cyclical. I don't know how to spell it. Cyclical. I claim it's that. I think. Let me tie this up for you for 2 seconds. I think that's how you spell it. I'm not 100% sure on that. So, what this means is that when globalization is happening, the things which stop it go down. So globalization can grow more. But when a world war happens or a Great Depression happens, the barriers to it go up. And then when globalization after the Second World War happens again, as much as this may look volatile, the impediments to it go down. Now, because it's counter-cyclical, what that means is the opposite happens, basically. When impediments go down, globalization goes up. When globalization goes down, impediments go up. That's basically what it means. As you can see here, there's obviously it is quite different. Now, what are the barriers to trade? Trade barriers, obviously, things like tariffs and things, they of course make the cost of trading more. Therefore, it could be cheaper to produce domestically than import. Distance is quite a big thing. Import costs, such as transport costs, because of the distance. Importing something from Sheffield to Edinburgh is going to cost a lot less than China to Edinburgh, basically, because larger distance equals larger trade costs, basically. Cultural affinity really kind of closes down barriers to trade, because sometimes cultural relations and being able to speak the same language and things bring the countries together, such as Britain with the USA, a very close country. Therefore, trade with them would probably most likely be cheaper, which is a good thing. Geography, ocean harbours and lack of mountain barriers can help transport and make trade easier. Landlocked countries have higher trade costs with other countries. Yeah, this is because, for example, Switzerland's a landlocked country. If you're Switzerland and you're trying to import something, it has to go through, for example, maybe south of Spain, through the Mediterranean, or in Italy through Austria into Switzerland, maybe. And that is, of course, a lot harder than if you have an ocean harbour where you can go straight in, such as in UK, Dover, train or van through the whole UK. So that is the impediments to trade, the barriers to trade. The enablements of trade, multinational corporations, MNCs. Corporations, multinational corporations spread across different nations, import and export many goods between their divisions, facilitate international trade. This basically means that a company like Nike will produce in China and export their produces in America to different places around the world and sell them, such as the USA. But it will not have always been like that. When globalization was not happening, they would have made them in the US, sold in the US, and then planted them around the whole world. So these facilitate international trade, really. Reasons for globalization: freedom of trade. The great reason for globalization, why globalization is happening, because the WTO promote it avidly, that free trade should be happening, and the removal of trade barriers to create a better lifestyle for a lot of people. Because if there's free trade, most likely a lot of prices for products would go down, inflation would not be as high probably, and therefore it would be a cheaper lifestyle for people, and it would be a cheaper cost of living, which means people can live a bit more luxury, really. Furthermore, the growth of the EU and Asian equals free trade and economic zones. So the EU have avidly had free trade, so Germany can trade with France for free, France can trade with Croatia for free. UK have left that now, so I'm not going to use them in this example, but that is what would be happening, that these countries can do it for free, and then their standard of living will go up. Enhancements in communication go for internet and use of telephones equal long distance. Yeah, so basically, as you can see from this example of that, on per capita basis, increased from 7.3 in 1991 to 28.8 in 2006. Per capita, first of all, means per person, basically. This is so true. Communications have never been such easier. Zoom calls and stuff really enable someone working in Edinburgh to run a factory in China, really, because they can be on Zoom instead of flying out there every couple of days to shout at someone, really. Labour availability and skills. Growth of industry in China and India equals they have a larger workforce over there, because the industry is so big, equals which is cheaper manual labour due to them being a developing country, and developing countries usually mean lower wages, cheaper land, and reduced legal restrictions, which is correct to China and India, and that's why they produce so many of our goods, such as ASOS products, Primark products get produced in that region. So do many products, and that's because there's more labour available and cheaper. The enhancement in transport, as I said previously, larger cargo ships mean you can transfer more goods in one ship and they'll be more powerful and they get there faster. Furthermore, economies of scale. Cost per good declines when operating on a larger scale. Multinationals operate on a larger scale, therefore they'll take advantage of economies of scale. And transport enhancements. Since World War II, planes have been avidly used, and they're exceptionally used, and they're exceptionally fast now. From Concorde, as much as it was not a cargo plane, it got from London to New York in 4 hours, and that is an amazing feat of engineering. And the enhancements in transport, Concorde would never have been thought about 50 years before that. In no way. The major outcomes of globalization: the growth of multinationals, which I've previously said is companies operating in more than one country and have a home country. Transnationals operate in more than one country do not have a home country. Micro multinationals are SMEs, small, medium-sized enterprises, which operate mostly by the internet and dropship, really. They take the internet to their advantage and be able to sell all over the world, really. Common measures of globalization. Total trade as a share of GDP. This is the most common measure of globalization, as the share of GDP. GDP stands for gross domestic product. Basically means, actually, please watch the other video I'm going to make on this if you don't understand what GDP means. So GDP takes into account imports and exports on its on calculating GDP. So total trade is imports plus exports, because that's what its trade is. You're importing or you're exporting. Now it means a higher trade share in GDP equals a higher degree of globalization. Higher imports and exports equals more globalization, because more connections between the world is happening, because you're importing and exporting from different countries, really. The value of trade, goods and services as a percentage of world GDP has increased from around 42% in 1980 to well over 60% nowadays, which would be true because globalization has increased since then. as we've seen in the graph of the history of globalization. Now, the trade costs, the additional costs associated with exporting goods relative to selling them domestically. So what this means is international trade costs more than producing domestically. Therefore, if you have a higher trade cost, it means you're doing more international trade. Thus, globalization is happening. Now, there's a price gap between countries due to extra costs or tariffs. Lower trading costs equals reduction in price gap between trading countries. So instead of producing domestically, if the price gap is so slight, you can do that, basically. Now, positive effects of globalization on multinationals. This is what, as well as the not common measures, the reasons for globalization is tested. This, reasons for globalization, I think I've just shown you half these slides. Positive effects of globalization on multinationals, as well as the negative effects of globalization on multinationals, are tested at advanced higher level. Now, the positive effects of globalization on multinationals is the materials they can gain. Access to cheaper raw materials. For example, coal is cheaper in other countries than the UK. That's what we've had. So a multinational can import cheaper, so their goods cost less and they have a higher markup, basically. They make more profit if they're using cheaper supplies, which they can get through globalization. Lower labour costs, they can exploit locals. Lower production costs, however, can create a bad reputation. So lower labour costs, such as in China, I don't think they have a minimum wage. If they do, it's very, very minimum. Their minimum wage, such as in the UK, they have a minimum wage of, I think it's a bit over £6 for over 18-year-olds. They can exploit locals. Multinationals exploit locals. There's no lying there. They do that. Some of them do that. So it would lower again their production costs. Higher markup equals larger profits, basically. However, they can have bad reputation. So basically, if I was doing this as an essay question, I would write lower labour costs. This is a rough outline. Lower labour costs equals lower production costs. Lower cost of production equals higher profit. Then you would do however for that extra mark of the however mark. However can create a bad reputation due to the idea of them exploiting locals, companies produced in China due to lower wages, as previously said. Transfer pricing. Transfer pricing is a very hard topic. If you don't understand, please watch the video I will be making about this in the coming weeks. Transfer pricing basically can reduce tax bills because they're moving assets such as cash to different parts of their business, which is in different countries. Therefore, they can dodge tax in high tax countries, basically. It can be seen as cheating the system and anger home countries, really, and they can be sanctioned, I think, for it. Because it's tax fraud, I think, having offshore accounts and things. I'm not 100% sure on tax laws as accountancy and finance. I probably should know about that, but I'm not 100%. It is cheating the system, really. It's moving assets. So they can do transfer pricing, which is an advantage to the company, which basically they will lower their tax, so they'll have more profits, which they can spend on expansion or paying dividends. Management and operation. New managerial and operational techniques can be found in a new country. It can be beneficial learning from different cultures. For example, America developed a production line. Only way to gain this knowledge is by being in America and seeing, experiencing it. For a quick fact, America, people say that Ford made the first production line. That's not true. A slaughterhouse in Chicago done it. Fun fact. New managerial, so them expanding abroad means that they'll have new staff coming in and they have their new techniques, which could be very beneficial, and have new ideas to production, which can make them more efficient. And then if this happens, they can bring it into the rest of their company, making their production, let's say, new operations method in China makes them so much more productive. They can implement that in their factory in Russia or something, and making them more productive, lowering cost, increasing profits, basically. Markets can find and serve gaps in the market, larger markets that allow for increased sales and economies of scale. Star Wars target in Britain. Okay, so basically what this means is that they can find gaps in markets because of globalization. They can say, for example, Starbucks, they're an American-based company. Because of globalization, they were able to say Britain does not have a main coffee supplier in there. They don't have a coffee shop, which like fast food coffee shop there. So they went over to the UK, opened them. They had such a new market, and this was made for crazy large sales because no one else was competing against them. It's called the Blue Sea method, I think. When you search up, it's a strategic planning and strategic methodology idea. And now, of course, if you're going into a place where you're not getting competed against and everyone's buying from you, you can take advantage of economies of scale because more people are buying, you're selling more, so you can buy more in bulk, which will lower production cost really. Legislation can allow expansion where monopoly legislation in home countries prevent it. The UK and the US have very tight monopoly rules, seen with the Sainsbury's and Asda's mergers being torpedoed. The CMA, the Competition Market Authority, in the UK are very strict on these, and same with the USA. It was the FDA. They are strict with these regulations, but however, if they are also working in a different country, let's say Taiwan or something, they won't have the same, and they won't have as tight regulations as these countries most likely. Therefore, they can get away with their unethical monopolization acts, which hamper Schumpeter's rent, monopolization, and they won't innovate and stuff. So it does hamper innovation, really, monopolization. That's why there's regulation against it. However, in different countries, there won't be regulations against it, and they can be in a price-setting firm, and they can be making absolute millions, billions from being a price-setting firm because you have no competition because they're a monopoly, basically. Production can increase control of production instead of outsourcing. Outsourcing is when you move your production to a different company because they've got better specialization, they've got better experience in doing it. So a lot of companies outsource their accounting to different firms, such as KPMG, Deloitte, things like that, E&Y. They do that because it's much easier for them because they are specialized in it. This, in terms of production, not accounts, it means that they don't need to outsource their production. It means that they can do it in-house. This is because it could well be cheaper. If they move it to China, they can produce things in-house instead of outsourcing it to a company, and they'll have greater control over the production. If that happens, it means more tailored items. It means they can change faster, and it means they can take advantage of changes in the market and stuff without severing contracts with outsourcing, basically. Demand can increase in demand by being in small, less developed countries. China demanding Western products due to Western MNCs being active in their economy. Yes, China demand American products, which is a fact. Can increase in demand. If you go in there as a monopoly, or even as a large multinational, such as in countries, Coca-Cola go in there into countries, and everyone wants it. So it's from a big country. It's got like the American dream written all over it. It's the drink you want to drink. So, however, in more developed countries like Scotland, Iron Brew does compete with it pretty well, and then therefore the profits in Scotland won't be as big as a country with equal population but less developed and do not have a competitor like Iron Brew. Influence. MNCs can influence governments and their policies due to host countries not wanting them to leave. This happens. The MNCs bring so much money in through taxation for governments. These MNCs will have a power over these governments saying, if you don't do this, we will leave and you won't get this taxation money anymore. It can happen. I'm not sure about how often this actually happens, but in theory it can happen, and it can improve their profits because and the way they act due to being able to do it. Negative effects of globalization on multinationals. Cultural difficulties. Different cultures can lead to conflict and misunderstandings. Example, different countries speak different languages and communications are harder due to language barriers. However, new technology is aiding this problem, like Google Translate. What this is saying is that, such as in Spain, they have siestas in the afternoon. In the UK, that does not happen. So there's cultural differences. We'd still be working while they're having siestas, basically. But because of these difficulties, going over to this country and be like, no, you don't get a siesta. That doesn't happen in the UK. That's not happening. It's different than that happening in the UK, basically. So you have to be very vigilant and very adaptive to doing this. Decentralisation. Companies which aren't decentralised will most likely struggle to react to change in local markets. Yeah, for example, there's a chocolate bar in America. I think it's a Boost bar, no, a Snickers. In German, it was already a chocolate bar. But if they didn't decentralise to having German offices and stuff and still running from the US, they would not have known that. And also like different tastes, such as I think we'll go on to that. Yes, preferences. Decentralisation means giving out control. If it's not giving out control to different places, you won't be able to react fast enough, because control will be at such a high line of control. You have so many levels, it'll be too hard to react fast to markets. Preferences. Different countries have different preferences and different tastes. Yes, that is true. Social factors and pestic and pestle analysis. Tesco in China sells live turtles. In the UK, that won't happen because socially it's not cool to have live turtles or eat them in Britain. Different countries have different preferences, and that is a Chinese preference, and they have the social factor is what is cool. It may struggle for companies when moving into different countries to understand what is cool if they've never worked there before. That's why foreign direct investment and joint ventures is normally quite a good idea, and being able to take over companies in there so they gain the knowledge they already have or employing staff over there. It's a good way to overcome the preference, the S in pestle or pestec. Ability to travel. Increased ability to travel is expensive to fulfill. Yeah, if you have an office in Britain and you have an office in Australia and you have to go to Australia, it's going to cost £1,000 to go there each time. Plus business. For large companies, they'll pay business first class. Therefore, it's even more expensive. So it can be expensive for companies to operate flying staff around all the time. However, now we can say communication, such as Zoom, aid this. However, let's get however in here. However, Zoom and other meeting apps resolve. Yes, so as we found in this pandemic, Zoom and stuff have came to power, and they've been able to resolve quite a lot of issues about travelling and stuff, and still be able to run a company working from home and things. Increased competition. Multinationals, when they first enter, can be rivaled by long-serving smaller businesses. They can also gain bad reputation for coming in and killing local business because they are so big. Yeah, multinationals can come in the country and totally curb small businesses. It's hard to know. I don't know the history of ASOS, but them being online has curbed the high street in the UK, basically. And if they weren't in the UK, the high street would probably be thriving, or another multinational would have came in because there was a gap in the market. When multinationals go into a new country, they'll have competitors against small businesses, and probably a lot of them. But they're too big, and they'll have more finances than them, they'll have better expertise than them, and they will most likely kill them, and they gain a bad reputation from that. Employee risk. Having staff in politically unstable countries are dangerous for them. Having staff in war-ridden countries. Yeah, if you have staff, if you're operating in Syria, when Syria war with ISIS was going on, you would not be able to operate there because there's bombs going off and stuff all the time. Customer awareness. Customers are becoming more aware of tax avoidance methods, which can be seen as a reason for why companies move into certain countries. Yeah, so companies doing things now is reaching a greater scrutiny than ever. Why? It's because media, really, more than anything, but also customers are just more aware of everything now. Therefore, some of the acts of companies are always watched, and it means they cannot fully take advantage of some of the benefits we've just spoke about. Increasing trends for local shops which multinationals are not. Yeah, there is a trend such as Save the High Street is a thing now. People would rather shop, like, such as go to like a local butcher's instead of going to Tesco's or something, because higher quality perceived and things. Perceived higher quality, I'm not sure if there's a quality difference at all. However, there is a perceived quality difference. Now, keeping on top of trends is the S factor in Pestle and Pestec. Therefore, if they keep on top of that, they should be fine. And if decentralised, they should also be fine. References. I reference Gillespie, Foundations of Economics, third edition, published in Oxford by Oxford University Press. Then the core team, the economy. This book right here, I will link in the description. This is a free book you can get online, and it's studied first year economics. And I recommend anyone who wants to catch up or reads a bit more. I've referenced it throughout, and please read it. This book is good for foundations, and they also publish an A-level graph book, which I also recommend. If anyone wants to learn a bit more economics. This has been me. If you've been listening, you should be listening, because it's an educational video, a bit different from my vlog videos. Please like, subscribe and comment, because I've actually went through a lot of effort making this video. If you like this video, I think you'll like the video of me talking about Heriot-Watt University, which was my last video. So please click up here, please subscribe here as well. And furthermore, please watch a video of me at university, because I speak about these sort of topics quite a lot in this vlog series of season 1. So please watch it, and I'll see you guys in the next video. See you guys then.